Welcome to Rewatch-and-Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 2, Episode 11, Reckless Abandon. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary and reminder of what happens within the episode. So we basically start the episode with Phoebe trying to get a job with Daryl at the police station as a psychic, where she would touch some evidence, get a flash, be able to lead him to the bad guys now that he knows their secret. She thinks this is a good idea. He, of course, because of all of the cases they've been involved in, is a bit on the reluctant side as he already has a bit of a reputation. And while she's talking to him, a baby comes in and Phoebe then picks up the baby, gets a premonition of the baby being attacked by a ghost, and realizes that there's a supernatural element involved and convinces Daryl to let her take the baby home. There we see that the sisters at first, at least Piper and Prue, are not very good with babies, but throughout the episode they do become experts at caring for the baby Matthew. We then, of course, have the baby impacting their daily lives and relationships as they go through their daily life and relationships while they use their connection to Daryl to get into the Van Leeuwen estate, which is the baby's family, after the baby's father was killed by the same ghost. And they first try to approach the mother. It doesn't really work out the first time. They come back later once they've figured out who the ghost is, and they reveal a piece of the blanket that had Matthew's name on it to show that they have the baby, which the family to date hadn't known about where the baby was. And they, of course, then are able to take the mother, though the ghost stops the grandmother from leaving the house. They take the mother to P3 as she doesn't want to see the baby just in case Elias can follow her, though he also is trapped within the house. The mother basically gives the backstory as she knows it, which is essentially that Elias became obsessed with Martha, and Martha's husband took exception to this and went ahead and killed Elias, burying him on the grounds, and then using his wealth and influence to cover it up. And then Elias became a ghost and killed the husband, killed the father's brother, killed the uncle, and now he's trying to kill the baby because essentially he wants to kill every male that is within Martha's family to watch her suffer. So then we move on from that to the sisters getting a potion to basically spread over Elias's bones in order to vanquish him. However, they mess around and Elias realizes what they're doing and hides his bones. And in this episode, the only other way to kill a ghost besides the potion is to destroy the object of obsession, which in this case is Martha. This is when we realize, or we're told rather, the true story was that Martha was the one who killed him, because even though Elias loved her, she loved her husband, so she was the one who shot him and covered it up, and that is why he is haunting her and killing all of the men in her family. And to atone for basically placing this curse on her family, she decides to kill both herself and Elias and runs over the banister, which allows Elias to go to hell and then her to move on. Meanwhile, throughout the saga, we find out that Dan is very good with kids, and this makes Piper uncomfortable. And on the split side, Jack is very much not interested in kids, and that Prue has to give up a trip at work because she's so distracted by the baby that she isn't able to finish her presentation and is out of the running, essentially, for that. And then basically, happy ending to the episode. Mom and baby are reunited. Daryl is seen as a hero because the story that they went with was that the baby was kidnapped, then abandoned. So he's the hero for reuniting the baby with his mother. And of course, there's the sisters saying goodbye to the baby, and then they go to P3, where they discuss their maternal instincts that they have gained and how many kids they want in the future, etc. and Jack and Prue then dance at P3. So now that we're reminded about what happened in the episode, it's time to rank the episode on our ranking lists. As a reminder, we have a mostly objective ranking list and also a personal ranking list. We'll start with our mostly objective rank values. Obviously, within this episode, we have quite a few single episode supporting characters, which are Martha, Alexandra, Van Leeuwen, and then we have Elias Lundy, who is our ghost. Now, technically, Matthew would be a character because he is a human baby. However, human babies can't really do much, and he's mostly there as the motivation to the plot. So I'm not really counting him as a single character introduction because the baby is unfortunately essentially, when we boil it down, a prop more so than a character, and therefore doesn't count towards the points. So with those 3 single episode supporting characters, we have a 3 points so far. We then get some multi-episode supporting character development, which of course is the fact that Dan is very good with kids, that he comes from a large family, and we also see that Jack, who's also a multi-supporting episode supporting character, is very much like a big kid himself. He's playing in a children's store, racing a child on a scooter while he goes there to look for Prue because he wants an update on their presentation. And every time she brings up the baby or he sees her with the baby, he looks visibly uncomfortable and obviously not interested in being a father at this point. But that is worth 2 points. We then get our multi-season supporting character development, which of course is the fact that Daryl is a father. When the girls are going to destroy the ghost or going to attempt to vanquish the ghost, social services has Daryl go pick up the baby. And as he's taking it out, the girls are giving him advice on how to care for Matthew. And he says that he knows all this because he is a father. So obviously, that is some development. And that is worth 3 points. And then our final positive, worth 4 points, bringing us to 12 on the positive side, is of course our main relationship, or not more, our multi-season main character growth, which of course is the sisters getting in touch with their maternal instincts. Not all of the sisters will have children within the series, but some do. And of course, after the series ends, it is implied in the epilogue that, of course, they all eventually have children, less Prue, who doesn't make it past season 3. Anywho, beyond that, they're all getting in touch with their maternal instincts. They're all thinking about having children in the future. They're all learning how to take care of the baby. When they first get the baby at the start of the episode, they have no idea what to do with the baby. It's crying constantly, or he's crying constantly. You know, they don't know how to change the diapers. They get the wrong size of diapers. They don't know what type of diapers. They don't know pretty much anything. They can't get the child to stop crying. They even resort to using Prue's power to make like her purse contents a mobile for the baby. Also, they look in the Book of Shadows to try to find out if any of their ancestors had any parenting spells, and they find a entry that just basically says sometimes a baby just needs to cry. But then by the time we get to the end of the episode and they're sending the baby to the mom, they have the system down pat. They're experts. They've grown very much into their maternal instincts and caring for the baby as compared to the start of the episode. Which then brings us to our negatives. So our first negative is our main relationship regression and or breakup. On an honorable note, not necessarily contributing to the points, but just for an honorable mention, we do see kind of at the end I noted that the last episode was kind of the beginning of the end for Dan and Piper, and in this episode as well, she sees how good he is with kids, and yet rather than being like, this guy's a keeper, she starts to feel kind of like she's almost inadequate in a way compared to him, how he's almost too perfect, how being with him almost makes her feel more imperfect by comparison. But then once she's expressed these things, Phoebe kind of goes in with her therapist mode and just basically says that because Dan was so good with kids, Piper was fighting her own maternal instincts and that it's not a bad thing that he's perfect, basically brushing off Piper's concerns at this point. And obviously, this hasn't led to any relationship things. This is just something she's saying not to him, but to her sisters. That's why it's an honorable mention, not the point. But I felt it was still worth noting. The main thing is there is a subplot where Prue and Jack are working as partners to try to get a trip to New York for the workplace that they can also turn into kind of a couple's weekend. And we see not only is Jack not really interested in children, and Prue by the end of the episode really is, but Prue also chooses Matthew over the couple trip to New York when she is able to go. She decides not to. And then a little bit of a positive, but not worth points, was that Jack also gave up the trip, which we find out at the end at P3. But when Prue mentions that, she sees herself being a mother one day and finding the right guy, he basically straight up tells her, for the sake of honesty, he's not the right guy. He's a child himself. He's not ready or wanting to be a parent. And this, of course, means that they are in two separate places, wanting two separate things, which can only mean that the end is nigh. And so this is, to me, a regression in their relationship worth the -3 points. And then we also have, lastly, at -4, a bit of a continuity error. In the episode in season 1, The Power of Two, we see a ghost from Alcatraz who makes his way over the pond, over some water, to basically take revenge on everybody who sentenced him to death, even though he was a serial killer and duh. But anyways, he was upset about it, having to take accountability for his own actions and whatnot, and obviously wanted his revenge. And at that time, the only way to kill a ghost was to use a potion on their grave to summon them to you. And then once they were summoned to you, take another potion that would kill you so that you could say the vanquishing spell as a ghost. And then someone had to revive you within 4 minutes, which is how they defeated the Azkaban ghost. However, in this episode, that isn't even brought up as an option. Rather, there's supposedly only 2 ways, and one is to destroy the object of affection or obsession, and the other one is to use a vanquishing potion on the ghost's bones. So in the series so far, we've had 3 ways, but in this episode, there's only 2, and that first way from the Power of Two, not mentioned, not considered an option, obviously not used. So, obviously an error, -4 points, which brings us then to an overall score of 5 out of 10 for this mostly objective ranking of this episode. And so, our mostly objective ranking for season 2 so far, in first place we have Witch Trial, The Painted World, She's a Man Baby, a Man, They're Everywhere, P3H2O, Ms. Hellfire, Morality Bites, Heartbreak City, That Old Black Magic. In 10th place, we have Reckless Abandon, and 11th was The Devil's Music. So with this episode, overall, I didn't mind it. It wasn't one of the better ones in my opinion. It was by no means terrible, but I feel like it was pretty average. I mean, first we had our continuity errors. Like the first one is that Elias was a human mortal chauffeur who after death became a ghost and somehow gained active powers in being able to shoot lightning out of his hands, which from the previous s- episodes where we've dealt with ghosts, which were Mark, and then we had again the not Azkaban, Alcatraz, Alcatraz's ghost. Neither of them had powers. They were basically their normal mortal selves even after death. And then we, of course, then have the fact that when they come in, Piper's power freezes the lightning, but doesn't freeze Elias. And he comments on the fact that they are witches, which if he was a normal mortal chauffeur, one, where did he get the powers from? And two, how does he know about witches? Because that's not something that everybody in everyday life as a mortal chauffeur would know. And then because of the previous ghost not having powers, I had to wonder, did he have the powers while he was alive? And maybe instead of being necessarily a dead mortal, was he actually like a dead warlock or something? But then if he was a dead warlock, how did Martha manage to kill him? How did he die by a gunshot? Overall, I feel like Elias has more questions than answers. He's also able to hide his bones magically from the window when he's being vanquished, which again, like none of the other ghosts were really actually able to do. And I feel like they just lost all of their lore as it pertains to ghosts in this episode just to try to make it a little more interesting. And that backfired because instead I'm just left like questioning everything about this episode and why it even exists. No offense to the episode. Like I said, it's not a bad episode. We also then have the sisters and killing Elias. So, number one, we have the fact that they go with the vanquishing potion. Prue uses her powers to raise the bones up. They have the vanquish potion right there. But they even send Piper inside the house to act as a distraction. And then, instead of just pouring the vanquishing potion onto the bones and killing the ghost, they instead decide to start whacking the bones with shovels, which of course alerts Elias, who then goes to the window, who then hides his bones, meaning that the only way to kill the ghost in this episode, because the method from the previous episodes in season one, um, for whatever reason, aren't valid anymore, is to then have the object of obsession die, which means Martha dies. So Martha essentially had two opportunities to live, and the show went out of its way to kill her, which is obviously the first. They could have just poured the vanquishing potion on the bones before the ghost was alerted. She would have lived. The baby would have been reunited. It would have had its mother and its grandmother, or Matthew, would have had his mother, Alexandra, and his grandmother, Martha, to raise him. Now he just has his mother. Also, if the continuity error hadn't existed, one of the sisters could have taken that potion, said the spell to vanquish ghosts, and again, Martha could have lived. But instead, they have her die, which honestly, Alexandra and Matthew did not recur. So there was really no reason why Martha had to die. She wasn't going to recur anyways. They could have had a happy ever after moment, and they purposefully went out of their way to kill her. And then, in addition to that, when she dies as a ghost, she tells Elias to go to hell, and a flaming circle portal thing opens up beneath him, and he does, in fact, drop down to burn in hell forever. His only crimes, seemingly, were after death, after he was murdered, and it was killing her family members who are innocent. But then Martha killed the innocent Elias in cold blood, and somehow she gets to poof away upwards? Consistency. She should also be going to hell because she also committed murder. That was her whole reasoning for why she belongs dead instead of alive, because she was making atonement and now she's protecting both, her daughter-in-law and her grandson. blah, blah, blah. And it's supposed to be a nice moment, except it's kind of ruined by the fact that she's murder and she's somehow not going to hell too. And she killed seemingly an innocent person, although for all we know, he could have been a warlock. I mean, why else would he have lightning powers and the ability to hide his bones, etc., etc., all these other things that the other ghosts of mortals who died did not have, other than, it being like a continuity error, which we already knew. Anyways, these things, they do impact the way I feel about the episode. I do kind of like how this episode does show how a baby can work within the Power of Three Charmed universe, especially since we do know in the future we get some children being born. But overall, it's the whole continuity error just really did not do the episode favors, but I did like, obviously, the character growth of the sisters getting in touch with their maternal instincts. I thought the baby was adorable. I also like the side of Dan that we get to see, and I do hope that he does off screen, obviously, because we never get to see it, end up with somebody who can give him a normal life and a family, because he definitely deserves it in the future. We obviously also got that basically letting the audience know this guy's not sticking around with regards to Jack, which is that like precursor warning that he's going to be going. After rambling all this time, I will reveal that my personal score for this episode was a 4 out of 10. The positives simply couldn't outweigh the negatives, but they were still positive enough to give a decent score. And that then brings our total personal ranking for season 2 so far to, in first place, P3H2O, Ms. Hellfire, Heartbreak City, Witch Trial, The Painted World, They're Everywhere. In seventh is this episode, Reckless Abandon. Then She's a Man Baby, a Man, The Devil's Music, Morality Bites, and That Old Black Magic. So now we come to our series ranking so far, which is our final segment, which is where we are going to be ranking each of the seasons against each other. Starting with our mostly objective ranking, we ended season 1 at 73.18% as its final score. And for season 2 so far, we've built up 86 out of 220 in points. And then on the personal side, our final ranking for season 1 was 71.50%. And season 2 so far in points has 58 out of 220. So with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 2, Episode 11, Reckless Abandon. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.